Welcome back to Hopeful Horizon, where we bring you stories of resilience, hope, and the courage to stand up against adversity. Today's story is about one father's unwavering love and commitment to protecting his son, no matter the cost. It begins with a peaceful day out on the lake, but when a group of aggressive bikers threatens their safety, Marcus, a humble janitor, is forced to confront his past and defend his family. What happens next will prove that strength isn't always measured by physical power, but by the heart's ability to fight for what's right. Stay with us as we witness an unforgettable moment of courage, a family's bond, and the power of standing your ground. If you're moved by stories of overcoming obstacles and fighting for your loved ones, leave a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more inspiring tales from Hopeful Horizon. We'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. The sun had just begun to rise, casting its golden light over the tranquil lake. The morning mist clung to the water's surface, creating an almost mystical feel as it slowly lifted, revealing the mirror-like reflection of the trees surrounding the dock. The birds chirped in harmony, creating a peaceful soundtrack to the start of a perfect day. Marcus Davis sat on the edge of the weathered wooden dock, his boots hanging just inches above the cool water. His 10-year-old son, Jamie, sat beside him, eagerly clutching a small fishing pole. The bond between them was evident in the quiet way they worked together, each action synchronized, each glance shared with a silent understanding. Jamie's small face lit up with excitement as he reeled in his first catch of the day, a glistening bass that shimmered in the morning light. "Dad, look!" Jamie shouted, his voice filled with pride as he held the fish up for Marcus to see. Marcus smiled and ruffled his son's hair. "You're doing great, Jamie. That's a fine catch for the first one. We're going to make a fisherman out of you yet." The soft chuckle that escaped Marcus's lips was a sound of contentment, a rare moment of peace. For once, there were no calls from work, no interruptions from the outside world, just father and son, together in their small corner of serenity. The lake was theirs, and for a moment, it seemed as though the rest of the world had disappeared, but that silence wouldn't last. The sound of rumbling engines pierced the air, their thunderous roar cutting through the peaceful atmosphere. It wasn't just one engine, it was a group of them, and they were heading straight for the dock. Marcus's brow furrowed slightly as the first of the motorcycles appeared on the horizon, followed by several more. The gang of bikers seemed to appear out of nowhere, each bike louder and more aggressive than the last. As the group pulled up, dust rising from the gravel path, Marcus instinctively moved closer to Jamie, his hand resting protectively on his son's shoulder. The bikers parked their motorcycles with little care, their engines roaring as they shut them off. Their leather jackets and patched vests made them look imposing, and their laughter and crude jokes rang out as they dismounted. They began throwing empty bottles into the water, shattering the calm and breaking the serene atmosphere Marcus had hoped to enjoy with his son. "Look at these two," one of them shouted, pointing at Marcus and Jamie. "Little family out here playing fishermen." Another biker let out a loud, mocking laugh. "What are you doing here, Gramps? This your big getaway from the retirement home?" He sneered at Marcus, clearly looking for a reaction. Jamie's grip tightened on his fishing rod, his eyes wide as he looked up at his father, a mix of confusion and fear in his gaze. Marcus could feel the tension rising, but he remained calm, keeping his posture relaxed as he focused on his son. "Stay close, Jamie," he whispered. "Just ignore them." The bikers seemed to enjoy the power they had over the situation. They continued taunting Marcus, their laughter growing louder and more obnoxious with every passing moment. Marcus kept his gaze forward, not making eye contact with the bikers, trying to keep Jamie calm and focused. But it was clear the bikers weren't done. They wanted more than just insults. They wanted to see how far they could push. One of the bikers, a tall man with a thick beard and a gruff expression, walked up to Marcus and kicked their small tackle box across the dock. The contents spilled onto the wooden planks, the sound of hooks and weights clattering against the ground filling the silence. "What are you going to do about it, old man?" the biker sneered, getting in Marcus's face. His breath reeked of cheap alcohol, and his grin was a predatory one. Marcus's jaw clenched, but he didn't react. His focus remained on Jamie, who looked up at him, his eyes brimming with a mixture of fear and confusion. Marcus placed a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder, his voice calm and steady. "We're not here for trouble," Marcus said, his tone firm. "Just leave us be, and there won't be any problems." The biker's laugh was cold, devoid of any sympathy. "Oh, I think there's already a problem." He pointed at Marcus's army tattoo, mocking it with a sarcastic chuckle. "Look at this, guys. A washed-up grunt out here thinking he can still be tough." Marcus didn't flinch. His calm was unshakable, his training and experience in dealing with far worse situations keeping him centered. He knew these types, bullies who used size and noise to intimidate, hoping to provoke a reaction. But Marcus wasn't about to give them the satisfaction. But that didn't stop the bikers from pressing further. Their taunts grew louder, their insults more personal. Jamie's face was pale now, his hands trembling as he clutched his fishing pole. Marcus could see his son's fear, and that fear cut deeper than any insult could. Marcus glanced at Jamie, giving him a small nod. "It's okay, Jamie. Stay close, all right?" Just as the situation seemed to reach a breaking point, the biker with the beard stepped forward and grabbed Jamie's fishing pole, snapping it in half with a loud crack. The sound of wood splintering echoed across the dock, and Jamie's eyes filled with tears. The shock of it all made him freeze, his mouth opening in disbelief. The laughter from the bikers intensified as they reveled in the moment, but Marcus's calm demeanor shifted. His protective instincts were now fully awakened, and his patience had reached its limit. He stood up slowly, his posture straightening as he towered over the bikers. The air between them thickened, the tension palpable. The peaceful day that had started so promisingly was about to change forever. The atmosphere on the dock grew heavier, the once peaceful air now thick with tension. The bikers surrounded Marcus and Jamie, circling them like wolves closing in on their prey. The loud engines that had once been a sign of excitement now felt like the sound of impending danger. Their taunts and jeers grew louder, a cacophony of insults and threats that drowned out the soft lapping of the water against the dock. Marcus stood tall, his broad shoulders squared as he surveyed the situation. His eyes never wavered, keeping a steady focus on each of the bikers as they circled him and Jamie. He knew the situation was escalating. The bikers weren't just playing games anymore. They were trying to assert dominance, to make themselves the center of attention. The heat from the sun felt like a distant memory now. It wasn't the warmth of the day that made Marcus sweat. It was the adrenaline starting to pump through his veins. His senses were heightened, the world around him sharpening into focus. He could see every biker's movement, hear their mocking words, feel the weight of their hostility. "Why don't you say something, tough guy?" one of them called out. "What's wrong? Don't want to talk about your glory days?" Marcus's gaze never faltered, but his jaw tightened. He wasn't here to fight, not unless he had to, but these bikers weren't giving him a choice. Jamie stood behind him, eyes wide and filled with fear. He trusted his father, but even the bravest of children couldn't help but feel the weight of such hostility. Marcus could see the unease in Jamie's eyes, and it hurt him to know his son was scared. "Dad," Jamie whispered, his voice barely audible. "Are they going to hurt us?" Marcus's hand instinctively reached for Jamie's, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "I'm here, Jamie," he said softly, his voice calm. "We'll be okay. Just stay close, all right?" But even as he spoke, Marcus knew that the bikers had no intention of backing down. The leader of the group, a towering man with a deep, gravelly voice, stepped forward. His name was Brick, a fitting name for someone who looked like he could crush a wall with his bare hands. Brick's eyes narrowed as he studied Marcus. "You really think you can stand up to us? You're just one guy. What are you going to do, old man?" His voice dripped with disdain. Marcus's heart raced, but he remained calm. His military training had taught him to keep his emotions in check, to never show fear in the face of danger. But something was different now. This wasn't just about him. It was about Jamie, and there was nothing Marcus wouldn't do to protect his son. With a slow, deliberate motion, Marcus reached for the fishing pole Jamie had dropped. It was broken, a useless piece of wood now, but he held it in his hands, his grip tightening. "I'm not here to fight," Marcus said, his voice low but steady. "But if you hurt my son again, I won't hesitate." Brick scoffed, stepping closer. "What's your plan, old man? You think you're some kind of hero?" Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he lowered his body into a stance that was all too familiar. He wasn't going to swing wildly or throw a punch in anger. He wasn't going to become like them. But he was going to make sure they understood one thing. Messing with his son was a line they would never cross again. Just then, one of the bikers lunged forward, trying to shove Marcus aside. It was a sloppy move, driven by anger rather than skill. But Marcus was ready. With a quick motion, he sidestepped the biker and used his momentum to send him tumbling into the water. The rest of the bikers hesitated for a moment, caught off guard by Marcus's swift reaction. But the leader, Brick, wasn't done. He charged forward, fists raised. But Marcus was faster, and just before Brick could reach him, he felt a presence at his side, Jamie. The boy had picked up the broken pole, his eyes filled with determination, and was ready to fight beside his father. And that, Marcus realized, was all he needed. Brick paused when he saw Jamie standing beside his father, holding the broken fishing pole in a shaky but defiant grip. The look in the boy's eyes, fear mixed with an undeniable sense of resolve, was enough to make even a seasoned bully like Brick hesitate. Marcus's gaze softened, locking with his son's. He placed a firm hand on Jamie's shoulder, steadying him. "Jamie, put the pole down," he said quietly, his voice calm but unwavering. "This isn't your fight. I've got this." Jamie looked up at him, confusion clouding his features. "But Dad, they—" "I know," Marcus interrupted gently, giving his son's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "But I need you to trust me. Just stay behind me, all right?" Jamie swallowed hard but nodded. He reluctantly let the pole drop to the dock, his hands still trembling from the adrenaline. The bikers laughed, thinking they had the upper hand now, but Marcus wasn't intimidated. The moment Brick had taken that first aggressive step toward him, Marcus had made a silent vow. He was not going to let these men terrorize his son. Not today, not ever. Brick took another step forward, his smirk returning as he sized Marcus up. "So, you're going to protect your boy with that fancy military training of yours?" he taunted. "What's that going to do against me?" Marcus didn't respond. He was no longer interested in words. He was ready to act. In a flash, he pivoted, moving swiftly to the side and catching Brick off guard. With the force of his movement, he slammed his shoulder into Brick's midsection, sending him stumbling backward. The impact was enough to take the wind out of the bigger man, and for a moment, Brick faltered. But Marcus wasn't finished. As soon as Brick regained his balance and tried to lunge at him, Marcus ducked under his outstretched arm and delivered a sharp blow to the side of Brick's knee, forcing the larger man to stumble once more. The bikers watching this seemed taken aback. They hadn't expected the janitor, the quiet man who spent his days cleaning and working, to be so capable of defending himself, or his family. For a moment, there was silence on the dock, save for the sound of Brick gasping for breath. His cocky attitude was slipping. He wasn't used to someone fighting back. Marcus's voice cut through the silence, low and steady. "I've fought wars. I've faced real danger, and I'll do whatever it takes to keep my son safe. So if you don't want this to get worse, I suggest you back off." Brick's eyes narrowed, his face flushed with anger. He wasn't used to backing down. He swung wildly toward Marcus, but this time, the janitor was ready. With one fluid motion, Marcus blocked the punch and retaliated with a sharp jab to Brick's ribs, knocking the air out of him once again. The larger man staggered back, gasping for breath. "Enough," Brick finally growled, his voice strained. "You don't know who you're messing with." But the bikers had started to lose their resolve. Brick was no longer the confident, bullying leader they had followed. Marcus had exposed his weakness, and now they weren't so sure about their chances. Another biker, a younger man with a scruffy face, looked to the others, his hands raised in an attempt to stop the confrontation. "Maybe we should just leave. This isn't worth it, guys." For a moment, the group fell into a tense silence. The power dynamics had shifted. The bikers had come expecting an easy target, but Marcus had made it clear that they had underestimated him, and underestimated what a father was willing to do for his child. Marcus's eyes locked onto the young biker who had spoken up. He wasn't angry. He was calm, resolute. He didn't want violence, but he would not allow his son to be afraid, nor would he allow these men to take their peace. "I don't want trouble," Marcus said, his voice firm, "but if you're looking for it, you'll find more than you bargained for. Slowly, the bikers began to back away, exchanging glances and murmuring among themselves. Brick stood there for a moment longer, his chest heaving as he struggled to catch his breath. Finally, he spat on the ground, giving Marcus one last glare, before turning on his heel and motioning for the others to follow him. "Let's get out of here," Brick barked, his voice laced with defeat. The bikers shuffled off, grumbling under their breath, their pride wounded but their hostility, for the moment, diffused. Marcus watched them leave, his heart still racing, his mind still alert. But as the last of the bikers revved their engines and roared off down the path, Marcus exhaled deeply, his tension starting to dissipate. He turned to Jamie, who was still standing behind him, wide-eyed but no longer trembling. The fear had been replaced by a sense of awe. "Dad, that was incredible," Jamie whispered, his voice filled with admiration. Marcus smiled and crouched down to his son's level, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We don't always need to fight, Jamie, but when it's important, when it's about family, we stand our ground." Jamie nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I'm glad you were here, Dad." "Me too," Marcus replied, pulling him into a tight hug. "I'll always be here for you, no matter what." As they embraced, the morning air began to settle, the echoes of the bikers' departure slowly fading into the distance. The lake, once disturbed, returned to its calm state, as if the violence had never happened. And Marcus, still holding his son close, knew that while the world was full of unexpected dangers, there was nothing more important than protecting the people you loved. Despite the bikers' departure, the serenity of the morning had been shattered. As Marcus and Jamie returned to the dock and began packing up their gear, Marcus couldn't help but feel the weight of the encounter. His hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from the surge of adrenaline that still coursed through his veins. "Dad," Jamie said softly as they gathered their things, "what if they come back?" Marcus paused, glancing at his son. He could see the concern etched into Jamie's face, the uncertainty in his eyes. "They won't come back," Marcus assured him, "but if they do, we'll be ready." Jamie looked up at him, his young face full of admiration, but also a trace of unease. "Are we going to tell the cops? About what happened?" Marcus hesitated. The idea of getting the authorities involved wasn't something he wanted to entertain. He was no stranger to the complexities of law enforcement, and he wasn't sure if this situation would be handled the way it should be. "No need to get the cops involved," Marcus said. "The situation's done. What matters is that we're okay. We don't need to let them get the best of us." But even as he said this, Marcus knew there was a part of him that was unsettled. He didn't like the idea of letting people like that go without consequences. His instincts screamed that there was unfinished business, that those men would cause trouble for someone else, and that next time, there might not be a father ready to stand between them. But for today, all he could do was focus on his son and the life they were building together, away from violence, away from the chaos of the world. He smiled at Jamie. "Let's go home, buddy. It's been a long day." And as they packed up and left the dock behind, the peaceful lake reflecting the growing evening sky, Marcus knew that for as long as he lived, he would protect his family, no matter what it took. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey of bravery, family, and redemption. Marcus's story reminds us that sometimes the true test of strength is not in how we fight, but in our determination to protect those we love, no matter the cost. It's a reminder that courage can come from the most unexpected places. If this story resonated with you, be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to stay updated on all our heartwarming tales. We'll be back soon with more stories that inspire change, challenge our perspectives, and stay with us long after the screen fades. Thanks for being part of the Hopeful Horizon community. Until next time, stay strong, stay courageous, and always stand up for what's right.